Welcome back to It Tastes Like Burning. This is Matt.
This is Jesse.
Give you the obligatory podcast notes here. If you ever feel like reaching out to us, you can find us at ittasteslikeburningcast@gmail.com. You can find us at Twitter at ITLBcast. You can find us on our subreddit on the same handle. And if you ever feel froggy and you want some extra spicy stickers, you can find us on Patreon at It Tastes Like Burning. We've also got a guest with us today, blast from the past, the one, the only, the myth, the man, the legend, Gene.
What's up?
Jesse's also here.
Yeah, I'm here.
So we were sitting here in the old podcast studio 12, trying to figure out what the hell we were going to do today. We decided to talk a little bit about some of the new, we'll call it trends, hot topics, talking points, ideas, just basically any and all things popular on the Twitter and the face scream and the lick talks and on
Book
and
of
on.
Faces.
Yeah. And the kind of universal theme with all this is that it's actually all old.
It's very old.
And it's there's actually not a new, fresh idea. And I don't want to take anything away from them in the sense that I appreciate the time, energy, and effort they're doing to try and reinvigorate the fire service and figure out primarily how to motivate the newer generation and somehow or another get that history and I keep wanting to say transition, but tradition, to get that motivated to a new generation. But I think at the end of the day, the one thing I want to give a nod to is that it's still the same powerhouses of yesteryear. It's just packaged differently now.
Yeah, because the reality is the only real significant altering advancement in fire service in the last 40 years is a thermal imager. That's it.
Air pack.
Air pack's been around longer than that. Yeah, no, but thermal imager, at least the last 30 years. That's the one piece of equipment that has changed tactics and stuff more than anything, and all the other changes are basically just repackaged, rebranded.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of stuff that's like, you talk to the young guys and they're like, hey, let's go to this class. And it's like, we've been teaching that class here. It's like, oh, no, it's this class over here. And it's like, we've done that for 30 years. They just renamed it. It's like, pay attention. It's the same thing. That dude's not special. I mean, props for the guy for wanting to educate and teach and be out there and get the fire service going, but it's the same thing we've done for 30 years.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I don't want to say bugs me about it, but I can understand trying to take something that's, we'll call it old and busted, and try and make it hot and new, or make it at least palatable to the next generation coming up. Fine. Awesome. I'll give you full credit for that. But at least pay homage to whoever's actual idea, philosophy, ideology, fancy quotes that you're using. I mean, you can't sit there and talk about history and tradition and, acknowledging your past while completely scalping off the top of these other, at their time, their prime speakers, the premier leadership, and not acknowledge them.
Yeah.
I mean,
because it's a slippery slope, right? You get over confident, over zealous in some of those practices, and then you read things into it, or it becomes where basically you're expendable. Like you accept the fact that you're expendable at that point, and you laugh in the face of everybody goes home, and those staple things that we depend on, like some of the things that I've seen, and I'm one that's all for social media. I think social media is a great tool. I'm glad that the fire service is starting to come around and be involved more in social media, because when Gene and I started, and back in the day, man, you got the little talk from the chief that you didn't even have a Facebook if you were smart, and some of us still don't, because that's just what was expected of us. Like, you just don't do that stuff. Don't be involved in it. Don't have it. Don't touch it. And so I'm glad to see that stuff's coming along, but at the same time, the principles of everybody goes home, and me, us, them. We need to hold true to that stuff. Like, I'm not a cowboy out here to just die for a cat in a tree. Like, that's not what I'm here for.
Yeah, we could have a long and very drawn out discussion, particularly on the classic. But to truly have this discussion, you literally need someone from like Detroit or Baltimore or Boston that absolutely, New York, that absolutely is committed to the vent enter search philosophy. One of my biggest arguments in that discussion is that at the end of the day, the true correct me if I'm wrong here, vent enter search comes from Salk, right? In New York?
Yeah.
Okay. We don't have brownstones here in this area. And I'm not saying that vent enter search isn't a really practical, useful tool, as long as your building conditions and construction actually support any sort of ideology in the ventilation front, much less entering and searching.
I mean, you can't really VES a travel trailer, right? I mean, by the time you open the door, it's gone. Like,
I think everything's got a place, and it depends on, like we talked about, the Northeast construction's different than the South. East Coast is different than the West Coast. Everybody does something different, and everybody needs to remember that it's good stuff, but maybe it don't work for where we're at. I mean, we talked about VES. I think VES name's changed 5 times in the last 15 or 20 years, however long it's been out, and somebody's taken credit for changing the name, and everybody wants to go see that person talk, but we're still doing the same thing that we've been doing for 20 years.
Right. Yeah, and like I said, it's not that I don't believe in vent enter search. That's not my point. My point is that it is exponentially more regional and truly situational specific, particularly when you get outside of a major city where you have entire blocks and neighborhoods that were all constructed in the exact same way with the exact same materials and the exact same time span. Whereas here, I mean, you can go 3 houses down any block in town and have
40 years difference.
Right. And then go in the county and have 200 years worth of difference in 3 houses that are 3 miles apart. It's just, at the end of the day, it's knowledge. Knowledge goes in the old toolbox, and it's a resource when it's applicable. And I'm not a big fan of sitting there saying that every single scene you're going to show up and you are going to do it this way. That might work in a department that has a specific district, but when you start getting to, I'll say, medium and small and rural, no, that's not applicable at all. Everything's going to be different at every different house you go to.
And you just take a department like ours that's started in the early 1900s, okay? Well, from that point to now, and on into the future, as far as we can fathom, there's new stuff, there's new structures, there's new techniques of building, and trust me, they're not building stuff the way they used to build it. The amount of materials, the type of materials, what the materials actually are.
Well, it's just completely different.
It's completely
It's a
different.
completely different standard. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we've had a series of structure fires that were the old Sear and Roebuck ordered houses. So they literally went to the Sears catalog, they picked their house, and they called the company or sent them a letter with their damn money. And in an X amount of weeks, the house showed up on a train. And then they built the house when it got, delivered. I mean, that's not common in New York City
No.
or Charleston. I mean, it's just, or, Northern California. It's just, it's a different time and a different thing. And like I said, I mean, we could really go down the rabbit hole on this. And like I said, all I'm saying is that if we happen to have a group of young guys that might be listening, a lot of the stuff that you're seeing on social media today, it's just packaged differently from an old school thought that's realistically been around for 15, 30, 75 years.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that. If the old guy doesn't know what the heck you're talking about because you're using a different acronym, it means nothing because they understand what it is. You just come up with a new acronym for it, right, Gene?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I hear that all the time. Well, this is blah, 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 blah. I'm like, what the hell is... Oh, you mean this. Okay. Now I know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, just talk about tools and equipment. It's like, do y'all run the XYZ tool? It's like, no, we run a hook or whatever it is. And it's like, why'd you change the name? We've called that forever. Just tell me what it is.
And sometimes some of those names and stuff are so regional anyway. I mean, some of the stuff we call things is not the same thing that it's called here, and it is what it is. But I see these young guys turn their nose up to some of us old guys, and I'm like, really? I've forgot more than you'll ever know.
I got T-shirts made more calls than you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, it's, again, we're sitting here, and it's going to sound like I'm attacking the fools, and I'm not. I'm legitimately not trying to throw a hand grenade at them. As far as I'm concerned, what they're doing is awesome. It's great. It's reaching a lot of people, and it's getting good ideologies kind of scattered out there to a younger generation. But every single thing that they have is just repackaged. Now, again, I'm perfectly fine with that. More power to you. Knowledge and getting the transfer of knowledge is awesome. Do it to it. I don't care how you get it repackaged, but be careful talking about history and tradition and not acknowledging where your actual thought process is coming from. You need to give credit where credit's due because of the history and the tradition.
And as far as that goes, also realize that some of these techniques and things that we do that have been developed over years or decades that are so regionalized, right? They're so specific to your response district, your department, the apparatus you have, the people you have. Don't instantly just think that the chief's an idiot because he doesn't want to do this new whatever it is. There has been an attempt to do that, maybe recently, you may not know, or there's been at least some serious thought into those tactics and considerations of what's being done on the scene, because coming from an old chief, it's different. You have to leverage the resources you have in the people, the equipment against the task at hand, right? And with the ultimate goal that everybody goes home. That to me is the most important thing. Like, we can burn down 4 city blocks. I don't give a crap as long as everybody that's here, that's with me, makes it home, and we do our damnedest for the populace, for the public. But you got to remember, it's not my emergency. I didn't create this scenario. I didn't make the choices that some of these individuals made that put them in the spot to need the rescue. That was not me. That's not my fault. And if it's too far gone, it's too far past the point, it is what it is.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's I mean, compared to you two, between the two of you, probably at least have 50 years of experience. I'm a little over, we'll say 12. So I've got a fifth. And to me, particularly as chief, when I say that I literally only care about everybody comes home, you need to understand that's all I care about. I want everyone to do a good job on scene. I want them to put their best effort forward. I want the equipment to work right. I want all the tools and equipment to also come home. That's kind of handy when that happens that way. But at the end of the day, you're just there to do what you can. And being a theoretical sacrificial lamb, it might work for you, but from a chief's level, I need you to come home. I really do. Because we've dealt with old firefighters dying. We've had that. Some of them were, I would say, legacy members, and some of them were just longtime good standing members. And some of them were involved with the department so long ago that they were almost forgotten about. We've had young men die. We've had old men die. We've had a couple of people that have taken their own lives. Let me tell you, those don't stack to a civilian death on scene. It's not even in the same ballpark. They don't even compare. Now I have no problem with, again, the classic Vent-Enter search, but one of my young guys recently said something to me that just baffled me. And I hope I'm paraphrasing wrong, but his statement was this: no room is determined unsurvivable until it's searched. Whew. Let me tell you, I have a fundamental difference in that opinion. And maybe it's the fact that the three of us sitting here have been to, at least one or two fires, and we've maybe had one or two, maybe three.
I've saved a few slabs.
Training classes, but I'm sorry, your ability to determine, to look at a structure and realize that I can't make entry is kind of an important virtue to have. And if you're either that blind or that suicidal, I don't know if I can be a big proponent of that ideology.
It doesn't make any sense. There's so many factors that you have to think about. Is there cars in the driveway? Is there not cars in the driveway? Is it a vacant house? Is it not a vacant house? Is it daytime? Is it nighttime? What's happening when we get there?
Total involvement of the fire.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, that's something that they've been taught. I can assure you, he didn't think that up himself. I mean, that's a class that he's went to, and that was told. And I mean, I'm not knocking the Northeast, but how many fires has in the Northeast they've hurt, injured, or killed firemen on fires that it was the third or the fourth or the fifth time that house is burnt? I mean, it's just asinine. It's just crazy.
Yeah, certain cities are plagued by that.
But I think just there's so many factors that go in to making those decisions. And at the end of the day, you're right. It's not our emergency. But would would that individual that's in charge of that fire be able to, what's their mental, what's that going to do to them mentally to lose a firefighter or injure a firefighter on something that was already gone, something that was already lost? It's just, I mean, at the end of the day, 95% of the houses get torn down anyways. Insurance comes in, wipes a slab off, and I couldn't tell you how many houses we've passed and we had really good stops on. It's like, where did it go? We stopped that. That's like, they could have fixed that, and it's not worth the insurance company's time to fix it.
Well, and it's a product of the lightweight construction, right? It's so cheap and easy to start over from scratch than it is to fix. They just start over from scratch. It's cheaper.
Yeah, and you know, this conversation we're having is, that's one of those borderline heresy discussions, because there's two very definitive camps on it, and I mean, I'm very, very, very far on one side of that fit line, where it's like, man, if it's an abandoned building, the grass is 9 feet tall around it, it's obvious no one's in there, and you got flames through the roof. That's the kicker. I'm not talking about light smoke showing and not making an entry. I think that's kind of like the one thing that gets kind of negated in this discussion.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, I'm talking about very, very
Involved.
very heavily involved. Let's go to like a single or double wide trailer, burning like a furnace in the middle, but on the left and right side, the Bravo and Delta sides, you got possible rooms there, right? I'm not saying not search those rooms. You can get a step ladder, throw one up on the side if you need to, get an A-frame ladder, step up there real quick, break out a window, and search that side of both sides of that house without ever having to go through the middle. That's what I'm talking about. Now, where you really get your... There was a death just recently. Young man, South Carolina, family, up-and-coming firefighter, very well liked, very well received, was very big in the educational and remembering tradition and history. And it was an apartment fire. Now, I haven't seen any pictures of the actual scene, so I don't know how many stories or where they were at, but I know it was a bad call. They were in there doing the good fight, and they got nipped, and building came down on them, around them, something. And how many was it? 7, 9?
No, I don't think.
I thought they sent 7 to the hospital.
Yeah, maybe so.
Now, to their credit, they did some damn good work on scene. They were able to get all of them out, but there was that one death at the hospital, and it just happened to be this young man. And like I said, I'm not going to armchair quarterback it, because I know nothing about the call. I get it. It's an apartment complex, but it kind of goes back to something that Gene was saying. What time was the call? Was it 3 o'clock in the morning? Was it 3 o'clock in the afternoon? There's a big difference in between who you're going to have home at that time.
Well, and the reality is that there's other factors, right? There had to be other factors.
Oh, yeah.
For that building to collapse. Because normally a building like that wouldn't collapse in a fire situation that was inhabitable, right? So there either some building construction issue, some other thing, some external factor that nobody's privy to, whatever. So there's all these outside factors that are already weighing against you every time you put your gear on, right? So don't compound my whole thoughts and philosophies, don't compound those outside factors by, and over-aggression is not the right word. Be aggressive. By gosh, be aggressive. Be aggressive in your tactics, be aggressive, but be conscious that not everything's in your control. There's a lot of things happening on a scene that are way outside of your control. What's the thing that Teeks guy used to always say, you're in command, so what do you do now there's a meteor strike? Well, I don't know. It's a meteor strike. What's your responsibility now? You've got to deal with the meteor strike. That's so far out of your realm of thought, but the reality is that it doesn't matter if it's a meteor strike or a puppy farm sprung up in the middle of your fire scene or whatever. You've got to deal with whatever it is, and it's all outside the realm of what's normal. So, yeah, I don't want to beat those guys up in South Carolina because there's way more that we don't know.
Well, and the fact of the matter is that just sometimes you get bad luck.
Yeah.
That just doesn't matter how well trained you are. It doesn't matter how good IC is. Doesn't matter how good of an engineer you have. There's just always a cascading series of bad events. And in this particular case, it perfectly lined up, and it just happened. My aviation background, aviation's particularly really unique to this, where the airplane doesn't just fall out of the sky. An entire series of events had to happen. All the holes in the Swiss cheese had to line up perfectly for the incident to happen. And if it would have hit anywhere besides a hole in the Swiss cheese, it would have completely stopped the event from happening. And it's not one or two or three things, particularly in aviation. It's about 20 things that all magically lined up perfectly for that event to happen. And truthfully, if you read like the NIOSH reports, which I do occasionally, they're really interesting, same as the NTSB reports, because the level of detail they'll go into in the research on it. And it's the same thing where there's 75 different things that all perfectly lined up to allow this one event to finally happen and have people there. And that's why I'm not a fan of armchair quarterbacking anything, because it's just...
It's that
it doesn't
multiple
benefit.
Cascading.
Right. And sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it. There are events that are completely out of your control.
The meteor strike.
Right.
I'm going home if there's a meteor strike.
Yeah. Just hang your head up.
I'm done.
Put the closed shingle on the front door. We're done.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the other side of a lot of that, and what you were talking about earlier with the deaths in the department and stuff like that. Man, that's when the closed shingle comes out, and it's bad. It's rough on the department. It's rough on your neighbors because they're the ones that are picking up your slack. Like, it's an involved thing when you actually put that closed shingle on the door and say, we're not fit for service, right?
Yeah, well, hell, one of the articles we were reading before this podcast there was, I think it was the assistant chief was being interviewed, and he was talking about that. Yeah. He's like, we're all the entire city's departments closed down right now, and we've got mutual aid and people coming in to help. I don't know if it was the entirety of Columbus, but definitely the station for sure. But yeah, I mean, you and then you get to deal with all the PTSD afterwards of it. But it doesn't go away. It doesn't get better in 3 weeks.
No, I don't think you would want to leave those companies in service if something like that happened. Mentally they're not there. They're not going to make good decisions.
No, I'm not doing justice by what that assistant chief said, but he was very eloquent in saying that those guys need time off.
No, good for him. Good for him to step up for his crews and just like they need a break. They have to take a break.
Yeah. And that's the other side of that is when that happens in your region or area, remember to be one of the departments that steps forward and says, hey, we'll help you guys out, because the kind of turnabout's fair play, right?
Right.
It could be you next time, and you definitely want to be on the right side of things when that comes up. Scrounge, find the people, find the apparatus, find whatever it is that needs to go tend to your neighbors, because they're in no position, no place to do anything.
Right.
I recently saw it with my buddy. So, yeah, that whole department shut down for 2 weeks. Luckily, there was neighbors and people from large distances, 80, 100 miles away came to do coverage.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the other part of this is that, I think in the everybody comes home discussion that, I mean, they talk about it, but they don't really hammer it down in the sense of the ramifications of if everyone doesn't come home. I mean, not really that it's applicable in this discussion, but it is the legal ramifications. God almighty, the amount of lawsuits that you potentially get to get wrapped up in the long run on that is financially devastating, potentially. Whereas if you just made sure that, your crews were capable and competent enough, God, that's a terrible way to describe it, whatever, got lucky enough to come home, just like I said, the legal side of this can just drain you for decades afterwards.
Well, it's not just, I mean, how many, and I'll pick on our fellow volunteer departments out there. How many small town volunteer fire departments truly know, like, what to do, who to call, where to get help, how to deal with the loss? And the information's out there, and there's some good resources, and we've talked about some of those resources before. But man, there's some places that sit on islands out there that they're not engaged with their areas, regions, or they're, I mean, you go out to far west Texas where, your nearest mutual aid is 2 hours away. What do you do?
Yeah, there's a lot of unknowns, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of bad things that happen down here. I mean, there's this whole county. Holy cow! I mean, there's a lot of people that's seen a lot of things and has been a part of a lot of really bad incidents.
Yeah, the wide watershed of variety that we get here is staggering, and you don't really realize it till you get with kind of like a different group of firefighters or someone with previous experience joins, and they'll start talking about something, and whether you mention it or not, you're like, yeah, we had one of those. Yeah, we've had that. Yeah, we've had that. Yeah, that's actually pretty common. No, we've had that. We've had 2 of those. Oh, we've done that. And it's like, wow, when you really start to like compare it, and reach out and talk to other departments and other members of other departments, career, volunteer, doesn't matter. Realize that somehow here or another, it's like the world's most random grab bag of terrible that you can get here.
Oh, there's some Mountain Doom that happens down here.
Yeah, Mountain Doom.
Yeah, no, and I think that to a point, like the more rural you go, until you get to that super rural where, the hay baler eating old Johnny was kind of crazy, but the more rural you go, the more extreme the circumstances of the calls go. And that's just personal experience speaking. And of course, I've never been a fireman in a major city, but man, it just seems like the craziest things I've been to have been to some of the more rural places. I went to a bus accident with like an entire college team on it that had, I don't know, 15, 20 helicopter rides to get people out of there. Like, it was crazy. There was ambulances everywhere. And that was in the middle of nowhere. Like, that's where weird, crazy happens. It's not to say that on I-35 in Dallas there can't be a bus wreck, but it just seems weird that the weirder things happen. And the hay baler. I mean, you ever seen somebody wrapped up in a piece of farm equipment? It's not.
It's one of the few
super
things
awful.
I've never seen on this department, but where I grew up was exceedingly rural. And I've seen that. The old farmer I worked for. Arguably, it's one of the first fatal accidents I've ever been on, was saw a guy I worked for bound up in a baler.
Wow.
That's wild.
Yeah, no,
crazy.
it folds them just like it does the grass.
Man.
Yeah, it's interesting. Cotton strippers, all that stuff's just death on wheels.
Yeah. There's a reason that farming's like the most hazardous job.
On the mainland.
Yeah.
No, I mean, think about it. Most of the time they're out there by themselves, and nobody
Yeah.
never even knows till hours later.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's normally how it goes. Or they're working on something in the shop, and it's one or two of them, and somehow a tractor magically runs over their head. That's another one.
Or does a donut and flips over on them.
Yeah.
Been on that one too. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there unless you guys have anything else to add. Like I said, it's not that I want to hammer the hot and new, but don't forget about old and busted. Our old guys, we kind of have a tendency to kind of hammer our old guys sometimes, but do understand that, in their babblings that maybe occasionally they're actually telling you the same thing. You're not willing to listen to it because it's coming from a 60 or 70-year-old man, and he's telling you the exact same damn thing that you're picking up on TikTok.
Or it is the 70-year-old guy on TikTok.
Now there is
Could be.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's possible. But, I always want to impress that, like, there's always stuff to learn. And we're all big training guys, all three of us. Like, we haven't stopped training since the day we started doing this, right? And that's the key deal. Even though we may not use the same terminology or whatever, it roots back to the same thing. And until there's major advancements in technology or some drastic change in building construction, those whatever tactics you use in your region, those are going to carry through, because that's what's there. I mean, it's if for somehow your department's just killing guys right and left, maybe you're not using the right tactics. But for the most part, we're not. Like, there's not a lot of line of duty deaths that are due to bad tactics. They're due to extenuating circumstances, things beyond the control of the incident command, a failure, or bad driving.
Gene, you might be able to answer this. Outside of 9/11, pretty much for the last 30 years, there's been on average right at 100 firefighter deaths every year. I know that number's true. Here's my question. How many firefighters are there in the United States?
I don't know. That's a good question. Just because of I know there's more volunteers than there is career,
Right.
but I really don't know where that number
We
sits.
we almost need to. So there is approximately 100 firefighter deaths per year, and we just looked it up, and there's 1.2 million career and volunteer firefighters in the U.S. And I forgot to look at what date that statistic comes from. So on the fatal side, that's a really low number because firefighting's not, for a lack of better words, being a hairdresser. There's an inherent risk and danger and hazard in firefighting. In fact, I would say it's probably, you know, up there on the top of the hazardous jobs out there, right up there with illegal logging and, you know, single man coal mining. And to have, from a total numbers perspective, that low, 100 fatalities per 1.2 million, that's a really low number.
Yeah, I think that's a 2022 number.
Now, the only question I would have to come out of that 100 deaths average per year, because ultimately everybody comes home, the intent is, you know, on-scene safety. So my one question is how many of those are actual working fire scene fatalities versus, I'm going to say, car accidents, roadway incursions. That would be the next way to kind of split that. And truly not knowing what I'm talking about, I bet you that's probably 60-40, 70-30, something like that.
I think it's and we just covered this in a class that we took not too long ago. It's cancer, heart attacks, highways, and then you get into the actual killed at a fire, right?
Right.
And it's a low percentage.
So that'd be maybe the last thing to kind of take away from this discussion today is kind of look at look at those statistics and look at your department and see where you're actually most highly vulnerable to, because you can use that statistical data to interpret, you know, your vulnerability. And if you're an exceedingly rural department that just practices surround and drown, well, you can go ahead and scrape off the old interior attack deaths off there. But if you're not doing a ton of interior firefighting, I bet you're doing a mountain load of wildland, and you're driving to those scenes.
And driving on those scenes.
Oh, yeah.
So that'd be able to give you an area to kind of highlight of some extra safety and extra precautionary stuff.
I do know of those, like, you know, you take the health issues out, the cancer, the heart attacks, those things, and then you focus on that next one, which is the roadways, and it's either coming or going or struck on the roadway, right? And I'm a firm believer that the roadway is definitely the most dangerous place we operate.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, no, yeah. For me,
Without a doubt.
100%. And I'm convinced that if we ever have a line of duty death, that's where it'll be. Won't be a scene. Our guys are actually really good on scene. Even the county department's mutual aid. Don't get me wrong. They may get some really bad luck. I'll scratch bad luck off of there. But the way we operate on a working fire, no, we're good on that front. But we have a ton of accidents in a high traffic area with a lot of distracted drivers.
With high speed roadways.
Yeah. Yeah, that's by far the worst of the worst, and
it's a high call volume for us.
High call volume, yeah. We do way more of that than we do pretty much anything else.
Yeah.
Even more roadway stuff than medical stuff.
Yeah.
And it's shocking to me how it's a lot of the younger guys just don't fathom the risk associated with some of that, like and get very complacent. And we all get complacent, but you see them get really complacent on the roadway.
Well, it's easy to do. You get tunnel vision. Take that whole vent enter search ideology, and I mean, all you do is zero in on that. I'm going to do A, B, C, D, and there you are walking right out into traffic.
Well, the problem with traffic is that there's so many other drivers, and you do not know what they're going to do. You got people that pull to the left, you got people pull to the right, you got people that stop in the middle of the street. You do not know what they're going to do.
The only thing we do know is it'll be our fault.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. That's all I have.
That's it?
Anything else?
No.
All right. I suspect we're probably at, an hour?
No. 47 minutes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, if you ever feel like reaching out to us again, you can find us at ittasteslikeburningcast@gmail.com. Holler at Jesse on ITLBcast on Twitter. Theoretically, you can find me on the subreddit at ITLBcast. And always, if you need some stickers, find us on Patreon. Gene, thanks for swinging in today.
Oh,
We
no,
appreciate
thank y'all.
it. Jesse, any other parting messages, words of encouragement, decisive thoughts, or interjections?
Use your head. That's my parting wisdom for today. Use your head for something other than holding that leather hat up. It's got brain power between the ears, hopefully.
We hope.
That'll work.
Other than that, good night.
Appreciate it.